Hi, how's everyone out there doing? This is Amy Hamilton, author of The Consummate Communicator, Character Traits of True Professionals, and the project manager. Life is a project. I am super excited about the project I'm working on today. 24 authors in 12 hours. I am on my fourth author, Raven West. I am so just impressed with Raven. Raven was doing print on demand before it was even a thing. And her book, the first one, which I have right here, which is one of my favorite titles ever, Red Wine for Breakfast. We're
It's
going to
not
be
a cookbook.
talking. What's that? It's
It's
not
not
a
a cookbook.
cookbook. No, it is not. And I am super excited. Raven has been on several different shows. She is a renowned speaker, and I am just honored to have her today. And she is in California. What time is it there in California?
6:30 in the morning.
6:30 in the morning. So in order to be on the show and to get your makeup on and everything, you said it was the first time you've worn makeup in 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
So you
So,
are up super early to do this today.
well, some things are worth it, definitely.
So
And
are you naturally a morning person?
I never was. It was against my religion to wake up before an hour that had a single digit. So that was something that just the clock happened, and I get 6 to 7 hours of sleep, wake up usually 4:30 in the morning, and I start working on my book. Number
Wonderful.
four.
You are a prolific writer, and I'm just really impressed with the diversity of your books, the different backgrounds of your books. And I would just like to ask, kind of in general, what inspired you to start writing?
I think it becomes something that is who you are. I don't think it's anything you develop. Now, there are people out there who start music when they're really young, and that's their passion. They start creating anything in the creating field, it becomes who you are. And when it comes to painting, I can do stick figures. I can't sing, I can't do any of that, but I can explain how it's done. My talent is words. I love words. I was a prolific reader when I was a child. My mom worked in the library, so I was there constantly. And just seeing how words come together is so exciting. And it's the creativity of putting that together in a way that no one's done before and creating people that are basically out of your head that become real. One of my best compliments was a reader who wrote on the Red Wine for Breakfast how much she hated the main character, Johnny. And I went, that's fantastic. He didn't exist. I created. Now, I have to say, I've created 3 human beings. I have 3 daughters who've gone on to create more human beings. Creating characters in a book is harder to do than pushing real people out in labor. Trust me on this. That's the truth. That is the truth.
Oh, Raven, I appreciate your candor and insight on that one. A lot of people do the analogy, though, of how writing a book and having a child in so many ways are very, very similar things.
Oh,
And
yeah.
an author that I had on in November, Jessica DeJesus Landop, she talked about that and how she actually was working on her book at part of the times when she was pregnant, and how the book was harder than having the child. So just a really interesting analogy that seems to resonate with a lot of women.
Well, writing, I also allude to it like cooking Thanksgiving dinner, because everyone has their own certain recipe. It's a turkey, it's stuffing, but everyone's creativity is individual. I mean, there's only a certain number of plots that you can write about, but it's how you create those different plots that make it interesting. So you spend days and days preparing this wonderful Thanksgiving feast, or years writing this story, and someone sits down to dinner, finishes it in about 30 minutes, it's gone. They say how wonderful it is. So when people say to me, oh, your book was great, I finished it in one day, I'm going, it took me 18 months. Can you go a little slower? Appreciate every single word that's in there. But it is very similar to cooking, and I'm also not a very good cook. So my talent is in words, as you very well know.
So, Raven, one thing I do want to clarify for our audience is this is an international book festival. Our last author was from India. Our first author today was from South Africa. Is for those of you who may not be familiar with the American holiday of Thanksgiving, it's probably similar to any
Christmas
big
dinner,
feast kind of holiday that you have in your own countries.
Right.
You know, and
it's
a
a
super
holiday
fun celebration where we overeat. Yeah.
anything you're cooking.
And if you're not familiar with it, just go ahead and do a Google Images on Thanksgiving dinner, and you will just see how much food we overconsume on our holidays.
Oh, yeah. Especially the Jewish holidays. That's all we ever do is eat.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about red wine for breakfast. I have to say that I picked this book up, and you will probably not appreciate me as a reader. I did get through a few chapters because I was like, oh my gosh, this red wine for breakfast. What inspired this?
It's very interesting. Many years ago, I was in a bar with a good friend of mine, and we were just talking, and we're talking about Beaujolais. And he said, oh, yeah, it's great, red wine for breakfast. And I said, what a great title for a book. And that was about 20 years before I wrote it. But in reality, the reason why I wrote this book came from the unfortunate death of my very best friend, who fell out of her window in the Bronx. It was sudden, and her and I were super, super tight. And I felt as an emotional release to write a story that people would read and remember her. And you'll see at the beginning, it's dedicated to Mary Ellen Grable, so that her life would mean something. And that this accidental death that no one really came to the conclusion, and there were, of course, rumors of suicide and all that. I wanted people out there in the world who didn't know saying that this incident really put everything together. Because I worked in radio. Everything in my stories are part fact, part fiction, part fantasy. So when it comes to writing about a radio station in the 1980s, a lot of what's in there is fact. When it came to writing First Class Mail, I had a source in the post office who was sending me information, and he was checking every single chapter to make sure all the facts, and there are real people in there at the time. Undercover Reunion about the man from U.N.C.L.E. with a backstory. And that came from my girlfriend and I sitting on her back porch a year before our 30th high school reunion. And we actually did play the man from U.N.C.L.E. when we were in elementary school. So again, coming from a small town, the people in my stories are real. I won't tell you who they are, they'd sue me. So everything, I do a lot of research, and the one I'm working on now is called Vashti's Daughter. It has a backstory about the holiday, the Jewish holiday of Purim. And the research that I'm doing for my fiction, the facts, I have real people in the story. It's just interwoven. And the research, I think probably that's why it takes so long for me to write a fiction novel, is that I do spend a lot of time with facts. The most irritating thing to me as a writer or reader is when I'm reading that's so completely untrue, it takes me out of the story. And I won't do that to my readers. Everything in there is factual, and it's very important that it is real,
we
so they believe it.
We kind of fast forwarded from your first book and got through a lot more of your book. So I'm going to back up a little bit.
Sure.
And we're going to focus a little bit more on red wine for breakfast, okay? And then we're going to get to the rest of your books, because you are a prolific writer. And what I can really see too is you're also a great speaker. And so I think it's wonderful that you were kind of able to summarize your body of works there just like really quickly for our audience. And definitely check out Raven's website. Raven, if people go to your website, what will they find?
Well, that is my WordPress website. On there, there are stories, articles that I've written, and there's also a link to my main website, which is ravenwest.net, which just has a lot more information. I started putting together the website back in a very long time ago. The computer, HTML, everything that's on there. I've done everything myself. It's just easier to do that. So you'll see things that I've done today, currently, things that are in the past, all the articles that I wrote for an online magazine called Amazing Authors Showcase. I had a monthly column, and it's all articles about the writing process. Writing is wonderful. It's very hard right now to create a fiction story because life, who could had even imagined what went on in 2020? I was going to write a political book, and I'm going, well, no, I'm not going to do that. It was going to be bourbon for brunch, followed by daiquiris for dinner. It was actually a trilogy. Didn't work out that way. So I think it's for writers right now, it's really tough to come out with something that is fantasy, unless it's science fiction, that something in the real world hasn't already done. So that makes it a little bit more difficult for creative people. But let me finish my fourth novel first before I decide on number 5.
So I think you bring up a great point, and I was actually speaking to the Mile High chapter this past week, and I was talking about the importance of, for project managers, we do, risk analysis in the beginning, and we talk about different risks that could happen. And I said, how many project managers a year ago in January put COVID-19 as a risk? And then by March, most of the United States was at least going into lockdown. And of course, in January, China was going through their lockdowns. But I think most people in the US, we didn't really predict that as being a major risk. So a great point that, our world has changed. And one of the things for the audience out there, and one of the reasons I did want to do this on what is Inauguration Day, January 20th in the United States, is that books are an amazing escape. They can really take you out of today and put you in another world. So if you're stressed out about the news, if you're finding like, these are some hard times, I would encourage you to take a look. And so let's take a look at your second book, at First Class Mail, MALE. Mm-hmm. And you were saying you actually worked with a postman on this. So that's pretty exciting. Can you share this with us?
Well, it's a very interesting story. I had joined a writers club group from Red Wine for Breakfast, and one of the gals was putting together her own romance magazine. So she'd asked me to write a 2,000-word short story. Romance. I don't do romance novels, but short story, okay, fine. So I already had the ending, and I did first 2,000 words, and I sent it to the publisher of Amazing Authors Showcase, and she wrote back. She said, "This is a great chapter for your next novel." And I went, "What next novel?" I wasn't planning on writing a next novel, so I started putting it together. Again, I did have a very, very good friend in New York who was a postmaster at the time, and a lot of the information, I was sort of doing it as a tribute to the men and women who work for the USPS. So there's a lot of people in there and articles, and I said, because at the time they're so maligned and they're just so insulted, and I also worked in the PO for a while. So I wanted to do something for them. And I got to the end, what I thought was the end of the book. And I went, if I ended here, the beginning doesn't make any sense. So my 2,000-word short story ended up a 96,000-word novel. And I went to the National Association of Postmasters convention here in Los Angeles, and I sold 250 books. Which she wasn't too pleased about, because he was slightly embarrassed that everyone figured out who he was. And I said, but you read it. You were helping me write it. Why are you now embarrassed about it? But we won't go into the fact that we don't talk anymore. But hey, I got a great book out. Yeah, we kind of parted ways about 10 years ago. But he still holds a very special place in my heart as an inspiration for one of my favorite novels. Even today, I still reread it, and I'm still laughing, and I'm still tearing up at the end. And creating that for when as an author, I write for the reader, which is myself. So I tell people I'm not a terrific writer because I write these books. I'm a terrific writer because I read these books and I keep rereading them. And it's an incredible feeling, even when I do a story, because as a reporter out here for a local online newspaper, I'll write it out and then I'll send it off. And then when it's published online, somehow it looks different when it's actually published with my byline on there. And I've written for several magazines, landscape, irrigation of all things, erosion. They give me something to write, I'll write it. You put creativity in everything.
Yeah. Prolific writer. And you bring up some really, really great points about, first of all, just, read what write what you would want to read. For my first book, I was going to write a much more traditional project management book. And I was like, oh my God, I'm bored by this book, right? Like, who wants to read this book? And then I said, I love the business genre. And it's a business fable, so it has actual characters in it. And then the characters go through these experiences, and people learn so much by stories. And you brought up a really good point about how children really learn so much from reading. We're about halfway through this segment. One of the things I did want to point out to my audience is that my books are available Kindle download all day long. Please go ahead, check them out. They're free today on Amazon. And so if you get an opportunity, please do that. And Raven, what kind of promotionals do you have today?
Well, actually, because my books are available on a platform called smashwords.com, I've put out a free coupon for anyone who wants 1, 2, or all 3 as an ebook. The only glitch is you have to join Smashwords, but it's free. So it's not going to cost you anything. But I charge 99 cents for the ebook, so you're saving, $3. If you want to actually help the author, you can go to Amazon and buy it for 99 cents. I think it's such a joy every once in a while when I get a notice from Amazon saying, we've deposited money in your account, even if it's $5, $50. That's thrilling. The tiniest little bit of royalties that come in. And the only thing that I ask, please, if you do get a free copy, send out a review, hopefully a good one, or even a bad one. There's no such thing as bad ink, okay? And do promote it on your sites and your platforms, whether or not, you said, I read this book, it's really great, or didn't particularly like it, but read it anyway because she's a wonderful person. I really like her. She's a starving author. And I was talking about COVID. I just wanted to mention COVID was the best thing in the world that happened to me and probably a lot of other authors, because we couldn't go anywhere. So what was I doing from September when I actually started Vashti's Daughter as a nano challenge 10 years ago, where you write 2,000 words to get. So I had 50,000 words sitting in my computer, baking, simmering for almost 10 years. And I said, well, I'm stuck at home now. Let's see what I can do with the story. Changed it almost all of it. The basic premise was the same, but all these other little pieces started to come in. It's like it's made your puzzle and all these other ideas. So in one way, it was a really good thing that it simmered for all this time. And I always say that overnight success takes about 20 years. So I'm pretty much on key with that. So being able to concentrate just on the story and then all these other, everything coming in, I think because my brain was cleared from everything, because I turned off the TV. I was tired of all the nonsense. And my kids are doing great, so I don't have to worry about them.
So that's always good to hear.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we just added another little grandbaby. That's 6.
Oh, congratulations. One thing I wanted to point out that you said, it's so profound. And we had an author on in our November segment, maybe October segment, where Jimmy Gia, if you get a chance, check out Jimmy Gia's books. And what he said, I love the negative feedback. And I said, Jimmy, I'm not sure I've ever heard anyone say that. He said, the negative feedback is where you learn. He said, when somebody says your book is great, you're like, okay, and it makes you feel good. He said, but when somebody says, hey, I felt that this is where it's inconsistent, he goes, that's where it makes you really become a better author. And I thought that, it really tied well into what you were saying.
It's called spin. Back in the day when I first put out Red Wine for Breakfast, the old way, I had an agent and she sent it out, and I received 6 rejection letters from, at that time, large publishing agents. And
always so hard to get a rejection letter.
oh, it was wonderful because there was always a line in there that I could use as a spin. And in First Class Mail, because my main character is a writer with an agent, she actually talks to a agent who said this to her, and they have this little conversation about how this agent says, I hate sending rejection letters. They really bother me. And in fact, Vashti's daughter, my main character, is a publisher. So not only is it present, past, but because of my experience over the last 20 years in publishing, writing, the book business, I integrated that into the story. And I'm sure a lot of agents and publishers will probably read it going, this is totally impossible, but hey, it's fiction. Yay. So, okay, I can do what I want. But I think negative feedback, unless it's personal, unless it's a personal attack. I did have someone troll me at one time and went on to all of the sites, said the exact same thing of all my books, but it wasn't about the books. They just did it to attack me personally. But you know, if you can't handle rejection, you should not be a writer.
Really good points. And Raven, we are coming up to the end of our segment. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to talk about today?
Well, I think the changes in the publishing industry. I remember when I watched Joe walk across the stage with his iPad saying, you know, we've got this great thing. I said, that's going to kill the publishing business. It is harder now and easier now to be published. And that's part of my story that I'm working on, the chapter right now, where my characters are on a panel at the LA Times Festival of Books. On one hand, anyone who wants to be a writer can be a writer. That was a big push. On the other hand, it's harder for an author to break away from the herd. I also wrote an article about that. So yes, it's easier to become a published author, but on the other hand, it's a lot more difficult unless you have a good distributor, you know how to market. And 90% of the time, a book, whether it's a good one or a bad one, becomes a bestseller because of the hype. So bestsellers are not necessarily written, and I can think of one in particular that became a movie that was just horribly written. I won't say what color it was, but the title of the book was fire. So it was the hype, people were talking about it, but the book itself was a POS, in my opinion. But it didn't matter. Bridges in Madison County, length also doesn't matter. That book was a little skinny, tiny thing. Again, another story I really hated. But it became super popular, 27 weeks on the bestseller list. They made a movie out of it. So size does not matter, I tell you, in writing. It's good words, good story, and sometimes if you try to make it too long, you're going to bore your reader. So again, the key for a writer is not the end game of being rich and famous and making a whole lot of money. You're in the wrong business. It's creating something that you enjoy, that you want to share with other people, whether it's your family or your friends, one or two, or the entire world now that we have the internet. It's giving joy and something special of you that's going to last long after you're on the next plane, which is wonderful. It's also a little bit of immortality because people will know Raven West with that book I started in 1985 after and it became a novel in 1999, and 3 more followed. Plus, I do have a collection of erotica out there under my other pen name, Firebird. It's called Journey to Dimension 9. And I call that a mixture of Doctor Who, Twilight Zone, and hot sex. So that's yeah.
Normally don't talk about things like that on these shows, Raven. And one of the things, though, that I did want to point out to the audience is that I did put on your advertisement, you know, one of your erotica novel covers. And it's not something I normally talk about. I normally stay away from politics, religion, sex, things like that. But one of the things is it is Inauguration Day. And when you look at our country, the United States, it's an opportunity for us to realize that it's okay to have dialogue with people about stuff that you're not comfortable with, as long as you're respectful. And so, some people might look at Raven and say, hey, I don't really like that you write that kind of stuff. But you know what? The fact that she does, and she has an audience, and there's people who have that belief system, that's really what we should be out there respecting. What's your thoughts on that, Raven?
Well, I think, having been involved with politics since 1980, not one of the major parties, discussion, you have to. I mean, what is so annoying, frightening to me right now is this enormous amount of cancel culture and the shutting down of the censorship by the internet. And people only go to see the sites that they agree with and what's going on at the college campuses. If we don't exercise our minds and have these discussions, and we should have discussions not to try and change someone else's point of view, my way, your way, I'm going to scream and yell at you until you agree with me, but just maybe set a little light bulb out in their brain saying, I'm going to investigate this a little bit more. You said something to me I hadn't thought about before. I'm not going to change my mind. We agree to disagree. It's a line I can't stand. I mean, I've been living with this guy. We just celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary. We disagree about everything all the time. But we're still together. So, and my kids, we discuss not so much politics. One of them is a diehard Democrat. One is a Republican. One is sort of like in the middle, a closet libertarian, like her parents. But having different views and being able to discuss them, I think that's one of the biggest things I've missed during the COVID, is going out and talking to real people. So having an opportunity to do this, keep your mind open. We cannot afford to close our minds. So if you enjoy reading fiction and you see something in there that sparks your curiosity about reality, go find a reality book, but have something else. But keep your mind going, because a mind is a terrible thing to turn off. So please don't.
Thank you so much, Raven. And you bring up so many great points. It is the end of our segment. This half an hour has just flown by. And I know it's 6:30. I'm not sure if you're having coffee or red wine with your breakfast.
Red wine, of course.
I actually expected you to have a glass of red wine today.
I should have. Okay. I finished it last night, unfortunately.
I know that at the end of these segments, I still have another 20 authors to go. I'll definitely be having a glass of red wine. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
One other point, where do I tell your listeners how to get the coupon code? Are you going to have a follow-up someplace that they can link to?
There's a place right here in the comment section if you just want to put it in there.
I don't remember what it was. Oh, shoot. I'll just have them email me.
Yeah, if you just go to the website here at raven-west.com, and then I can always add that coupon code in later. Thank you so much, Raven.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, and have a wonderful inauguration day. Bye.